It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll. But listen closely.
Not for very much longer.
I've got to keep control.
I remember doing the time war, drinking those moments when the blackness would hit me and the void would be calling. Let's do the time war again. Let's do the time war again.
We begin in London in 1830 with the variety acts of British hall music. Oddly enough, though, these performances started in public houses or pubs and saloons. But they gained so much popularity that by 1850, pubs were being demolished and turned into specialized music hall theaters where patrons would enjoy the show while eating, drinking, and smoking. Professional songwriters like Alfred Lee, Charles Collins, and R.A. Eastburn were enlisted to provide music for star performers. Like Marie Lloyd, she was known as the Queen of Music Hall, performing songs like The Boy I Loved Is Up in the Gallery, My Old Man Said Follow the Van, and When I Take My Morning Promenade.
As I take my morning promenade, quite a fashion tag on the promenade. Now
George Leyburn was known as a Lyons comique, a performer with an imposing personality and appearance, who sang songs that were, quote, hymns of praise to the virtue of idleness and drinking. These songs distorted social reality for audiences' amusement and escapism. Amusement and escapism? Sounds like theater to me. You would also see pantomime artists like Little Tish, who was a 4-foot 6-inch tall comic and dancer.
Was hailed as a genius. Do you remember him?
After World War I, British hall music was becoming less popular due to up-and-coming jazz, swing, and big band. And in 1914, drinking was banned from the auditorium, killing the revenue. New types of hall music arrived in forms of variety shows, but many of the hall performers failed to make the shift, so they were called old-fashioned, and hall music entertainment ceased. Meanwhile, at the same time hall music was entertaining the masses in London, the classical world of music was keeping up the historical tradition of fighting back against the establishment, bringing us to France and Jacques Offenbach. At that time, 1850, operetta was created as an art form in response to the French government's oppressive law regarding the staging of works that were longer than one act and had more than 4 characters. The performances were a light-hearted, mass-market alternative to the traditional opera, taking advantage of the latest trends in popular song, dance, and fashion, and targeting a diverse and cosmopolitan audience. Even though the style began in France, different and distinct styles of operetta emerged all over the world, from Coscoletto by composer Jacques Offenbach and librettist Charles Noirtier and Antoine Truffaut, to the famous Die Fledermaus by German composer Johann Strauss and librettist Karl Hofter and Richard Genet, and La Caliceta by Spanish composer Francisco Alonso and librettist Emilio Garcia de la Castillo and Luis Martinez Roman. But by the mid-1930s, operetta began to lose favor by audiences and eventually gave way to a more modern musical theater. Wait! Not that modern. Slow your roll. We are just getting to America's versions of early musical theater. Let's rewind a little and hop over to the States.
While hall music was killing it in London and operetta was sticking it to the man in France, Germany, Spain, Australia, and, well, all over, America developed its own flavor of hall music known as burlesque.
Disclaimer, it gets a little PG-13 here, but no worries, we have adult supervision. Burlesque was a style of variety show born in Lower Manhattan in the late 1800s that catered to men, featuring singers, dancers, and physical comics, whose humor was filled with lewd content, sexual innuendo, and off-color humor. I know, right? But hang on for this, because everything leads to our musical theater.
Boom Sauce!
Yes!
The most prestigious variety house was Coaster and Biles on West 23rd Street. These shows featured singers like Lydia Thompson.
Ziegfeld Follies, performer Ruth Edding, and Minsky burlesque performer Gypsy Rose Lee. Sing it out, Louise!
And when I raise my skirts with slyness and dexterity, I'm mentally computing just how much I'll give to charity.
Wait, I thought you was gonna say or do something dirty.
Back then, that was dirty. Really? I had to get my mom's signature to let me narrate this. I see girls at school wearing less. For reals, but it did get a little more adulty. But this is the PG-13 version, remember? Well, anyway, these types of performances had a pretty long run.
Until 1937, when New York's mayor, LaGuardia, closed all of the burlesque houses, ending, and I quote, incorporated filth.
So what happened to the theaters then?
Luckily for all of us, there was a G-rated version of the same types of performances happening during the same time period.
Yes, vaudeville! That's it. In 1881, Tony Pastor opened his own theater. And this one was family friendly,
with high standards for its performers and performances.
There were acts by W.C. Fields, a juggler and comic, Will Rogers, a cowboy, yeehaw!
And famous beauty, Lillian Russell.
Hold on, she was pretty? That's it?
Well, she sang too.
Okay. You can't forget the escape artist Harry Houdini.
That's cool.
Ooh, alright. And because of the trains and ferry boats, acts could travel all over, so they weren't just performed in New York. In 1896, motion pictures were introduced, so the theaters would show silent movies on nights between performances, and live musicians would play music to go along with the movie. Fast forward to 1927. This was when we saw the first full-length motion picture with actual talking. These were known as talkies, and you could imagine were a huge deal because they had actual vaudeville acts featured in the performances.
By the 1930s, the Great Depression, growth of the radio and radio shows, and eventual development of television contributed to the rapid decline of vaudeville.
Not to mention that a number of the famous vaudeville acts were now spending all of their time in Hollywood to film movies. Yep, and by the end of World War II, vaudeville was a thing of the past.
Is this it for live performance?
Will we never hear the sweet sound of voices and the clacking of tap shoes again? Stay tuned for the next installment of Time Warp, the history of musical theater.
It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness.